Rome, Constantinople. This city was established May 11th, 330 AD. Now, very few cities have the exact establishment date, but this is one of those cities. Right now, I'm standing in the middle of what used to be a oval-shaped chariot racetrack. The distance was about 1 kilometer, and the chariots would have to actually complete 7 tours around this once magnificent hippodrome. It had a capacity of up to 60,000 spectators. Now today, there's not much left of this hippodrome because the Crusades, and of course, once the chariots lost their pizzazz and popularity, the stones from the hippodrome were actually used in other buildings in the area. Today, we're going to check out the small bit of it that's left over and start seeing what's underground in Istanbul. Behind me is the last remaining part of this magnificent hippodrome. This is the back wall of the spectator section. Now, when you see how large it is, you understand the colossal size of this hippodrome. 60,000 capacity is quite a big deal. Now, what's more interesting to me is that on top of this section is actually now another building. And this is a perfect example of Istanbul. Layers upon layers upon layers. Istanbul is the only city in the world that has been the capital of 3 major empires. Behind me is a perfect example of this. This is a parking garage, and a few years back, the ground gave away to reveal exactly what I'm talking about. The layer upon layer of history that exists here. We're talking about the underground of Istanbul today, and we have to really start above ground because there's so much of a mystery of what is below. And this is a perfect example of what we can find below the ground. Right now, we're going to continue on to some of the more famous underground of Istanbul, the cisterns. There are at least 200 cisterns in Istanbul. Now, these cisterns were built for a very important purpose, water, obviously. But why? Because this is a fortification city. Istanbul has a huge fortification wall that goes around it that's quite famous, actually, because nobody could pass it. That's why it was so well protected. But this wall, of course, also was a problem because the water coming into the city was cut off by the enemy. It was the first thing they did. So the Byzantines came up with a great idea. They decided to build cisterns that they could store water in so that the water supply of Istanbul would never be a problem. Now, these cisterns are actually built of recycled material. These columns that you see were all part of pagan temples once. This is the Binbir Direk Sarnıç. It's also known as the Philoxenos, the cistern, and it's the second largest in Istanbul with 226 double columns. Now, these double columns are very important because, as you can see, gives them twice as much space. This cistern could hold up to 40,000 metric cubes of water, which is quite a lot. And I know you're thinking it must be the biggest, but the largest one is actually almost double the size. It holds 80,000 meters cubed of water and has 336 double columns. And this is called the Basilica Cistern, or Yerebatan. Today it's under renovation, so we'll be able to show you some pieces of it from before, but I know it's going to be even better than it was, so make sure you don't miss it when you come to Istanbul. One of the most important architectural features here, other than the double columns of course, is the arched ceilings. Because of this arched architecture that the Romans had mastered, you were able to build these high, bigger, larger structures, and this is a perfect example of that. This cistern was built in the 4th century, so it's over 1,500 years old. And when you think about that and you look at what great condition it's in, it's really an amazing architectural feat. Right now we're going to continue on to another cistern, but this one I've got a surprise for you. This is the Şerefiye Sarnıç, or the Theodosios cistern. Now, this cistern is very, very interesting, and I had promised you a surprise. Here it is. This cistern actually has a 360-degree mapping system going on inside of it, where it explains the water systems of Istanbul and 1,700 years of its history. This is something that is one of my favorite things to come to see, especially when people come to visit me, so I really think you should see it too. This is a city where old meets new, where east meets west, and where history meets technology, only in Turkey.